I'm David Korten with the Living Economies Forum and Yes Magazine. I'm so delighted to be part of the conversation, be present, and to be part of this larger discussion about a new economy and a new economics to guide us in that economy. That the whole process of economic growth and economic performance that we have dedicated ourselves to now on a global scale is really about a process of destroying the relationships of community and family in order to grow the dependence of human beings on money. The whole question of how we create money is fascinating to me because our conventional neoliberal economics that we organize and teach around basically doesn't address that issue. And it does not address the implications of the choices we make for how we create money. And in our current system, which is organized basically around private banks, and even though we call our major bank the Federal Reserve, and it sort of implies that it's a public institution, it's basically run by private bankers. And these private bankers, their sole goal is to maximize the profits of their bank. And the way most of our money is created is that the banks issue loans. Now, we're sort of conditioned to believe that they're loaning the deposits of their depositors, the money that their depositors put into the bank. That's very, very little of it. The reserve requirements are very limited. That most of that money is money that is simply created by a computer keystroke. It's created out of nothing. And that money goes into circulation for whatever the borrower wants to use it. And increasingly, the bulk of that money is to support consumption that the person borrowing doesn't have enough income to cover currently, which is building more and more debt. A probably even larger portion of that money is to fund speculation in the financial markets, growing financial bubbles. Now, all of this has to be repaid with interest that the issuance of the money does not create. So to keep the system from collapsing, it has to continue. The overall economy, as we measure by GDP, has to keep growing, even though that growth is only inflating financial bubbles, inflating the financial asset accounts of the already richest among us, and shifting power to a very small minority of the population to give them greater power to control the economy over the rest of us. The value of money is created essentially by the willingness of government to receive it in the payment of taxes. So it makes most sense if when government creates the money with government banks or a government central bank, creates the money and then spends it into existence not as loans, but actually to fund public infrastructure or to fund education or fund those things that actually build the capacity of the society to function with greater benefit to people's lives. And that actually potentially significantly reduces the amount of the taxes that we have to pay. And it eliminates the essential, the requirement for the economy to grow to avoid financial collapse. And this all gets a little, sometimes a little hard to follow because money itself is nothing but a fiction. So we're we're just playing with these fictions, with these illusions. But this is the way it plays out. Now, if we really recognize that money is simply a token of exchange, And we, the people, create it through our governments simply to finance things that will improve our well-being when we need to increase the money supply. Then we're making actual investments. We can be, when we do loans, we have community banks or cooperative banks that do in fact take the savings of their depositors. And if we're dealing with a relatively equal society, which is also a foundational requirement for a money system that works, you know, just imagine that we're all kind of middle-class people and we have our community bank and we put our savings in the community bank. And then when we want to buy our house or we want to finance a small business in the community to meet some community need, we go get a loan from the bank, which aggregates our savings, loans it back to us. And so we're all savers and we're all borrowers in a sense, which is very different from this extremely divided society with a tiny majority of really wealthy people that control the money, so that all the rest of us are borrowing money to live day by day and then paying the interest all to the already richest people in the world who have the least possible need for that income. So this is just another example of how absurd our existing economy is, and the fact that the economists who are driving economic policy haven't a clue about this set of issues. They just don't discuss it. They don't think about it. And this is all why, you know, my current priority is doing whatever I can to facilitate the development of a new economics, which would be an economics that is based on biology and ecology rather than on finance and money. We are creatures of the mind. We literally create our reality out of our beliefs. And when we talk about our human nature, I do think that there are characteristics of our deep nature which align with life and which are fundamentally cooperation. But we have the ability to completely override those deeper instincts of our nature and redefine our nature in ways that are purely our own creation. So we can actually condition ourselves to believe that our moral duty to the community is to focus on our personal income, maximizing that personal income, and engaging in a constant competition with everyone else to maximize our consumption and our control. And we can be led to believe that that is the way somehow creation was organized, and that is a defining value, even though it is fundamentally contrary to what most every one of our major religions and spiritual traditions teaches. Now, what's important there is recognizing that, okay, if we create that in our minds, and it has no reality outside of our minds, we can potentially change it instantly. All we have to do is change what's in our head, change our understanding. And that again gets us back to why the work that an economy of our own is setting out to do. It's about rearranging what we share in our heads, because even though we may recognize that that common story in the culture is totally invalid, if everybody else that we relate to is acting as if that is true, then we find ourselves in a position where we have to act more or less the same way. So it's more than just by changing my mind. We have to have the conversation that allows us to change our collective mind. And within a frame of recognizing we can't create just any world we want. And ironically, one of the deepest implications of that, there is no way we can create a world in which everyone is living with the gross consumption of Bill Gates or some of the current billionaires. I mean, there is no possibility of that on a finite earth. But we can embrace the values and the dreams that have shaped much of the deepest thinking of humanity for many thousands of years, of a world of peace, of material sufficiency, of love, of caring, of mutual support, of the beauty of nature. It is totally within our means to create that, but we just have to get the story right. The problem with our current economy is that it basically doesn't work for anybody. I've frankly had just enough experience with, a few very rich people to realize it really doesn't work for them either. Imagine yourself a billionaire. Oh, you're going to be really popular. Going to be a lot of people trying to make friends with you. But is it because they like you or because they want your money? Now, the other piece of this was a lesson I actually learned from a female colleague many years ago. We were both very involved in the Society for International Development. And one day she gave me her perspective on the women's movement. And she said, we've got a basic choice to make. Is the purpose of this movement to demand an opportunity for women to become equal opportunity exploiters in an exploitative system? Or is the role of the women's movement to transform the system to eliminate the exploitation? Again, another thing that I have learned, that in terms of the power to transform the system, the people who have been most excluded by that system are the ones that have the deepest understanding of what has to be transformed. And it is from that knowledge that it's very important for them to lead. That is leadership we absolutely have to have. It's just amazing that, economists can look out and they look at the GDP figures and they look, the stock market's doing fine and we're increasing jobs and so forth. And somehow the experience of an economics education is so mind-numbing that they can't actually even see the actual impact on people's lives. Our spiritual well-being depends on community, on being a participant in life, not to make money, but to be creative, to feel needed, to feel that we are contributing to life and the creative unfolding of life. That's where we get our real satisfaction and meaning. Totally ignored by contemporary economics. Much to be discussed, much to do, and I think an economy of our own, and the way you're framing it is just right on track. And I thank you so much for including me, because it's already made an important contribution to my own thinking.